On this episode of Skeptiko, Alex talks with Scott De Tamble about his work with past life regression.
The memories we have in our current lifetime are encoded in our brains and our neurons in an electrochemical soup of memory, however that works. And they have a certain solidity. So if I ask you, what did you have for dinner last night? You'll say, well, it was lasagna. It was great. And if I ask you, where were you 500 years ago? Your brain kind of goes, huh? But you know where you were 500 years ago. Your soul, your energy, your essence knows that you were on the plains of Mongolia riding a pony. So the memories from your soul feel a little different.
Stay with us for Skeptiko.
Welcome to Skeptiko, where we explore controversial science with leading researchers, thinkers, and their critics. I'm your host, Alex Tsakiris, and on this episode, something new, an experiential kind of episode. We're going to look at past life and between life regressions with Scott De Tamble, and then I'm going to tell you about the session that I did with Scott and how that went. So this interview is really kind of in preparation for that session, and you'll hear the questions that I ask are the questions that I would normally ask if I was going into a session like this. It was really interesting for me, and I have several more of these planned. I actually have one that's already done that's really interesting, and I have a couple of more of these in the works. So this is kind of a new area of personal exploration for me that I want to share with you. I hope you enjoy it. Here's my dialogue with Scott De Tamble. Today we welcome Scott De Tamble to Skeptiko. Scott is a hypnotherapist, and specifically he's trained in and specializes in past life and between lives hypnotic regressions. Scott, welcome to Skeptiko.
Thank you, Alex. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's a pleasure for me, and it's exciting. I want to tell people what we're doing. I think they'll really find it interesting. This topic in general is fascinating. It's something we've explored a couple of times on the show, including an interview with, I guess you could say, a colleague of yours, Jean-Charles Chabot in Montreal, who's also trained by Michael Newton and does past life and between life regression. So, I don't want to claim that or suggest that there's any kind of association between you guys, but I just want to let you know that, folks who are listening to the show are familiar with the basic ideas, but maybe not with you. So perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, your training, that kind of stuff.
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. So I haven't met him, but we are members of the same organization, the Newton Institute. The Newton Institute trains qualified hypnotherapists in the life between lives process. So, yeah, we are colleagues, though I have never really crossed paths with him. I think I might have seen some of his stuff on YouTube. He's doing some really great work. And
yeah, he does some kind of cool YouTube videos that draw you in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so we're definitely colleagues, and, I wish him all the best. So, me, I'm not a real, special guy or anything. I'm just someone that was always interested in spirituality and metaphysics and the occult and the mind and this kind of thing. Also history and archaeology and things like that from a very early age. So, I don't know, I've done a lot of different things in my life, and at a certain point, I was really fascinated with past life regression. I felt that, I may have lived before. I'm drawn to certain epochs, certain periods in history, and certain places in the world. And so I decided, hey, I want to learn how to do this, and I want to undergo it myself. So I did hypnosis training, and it was very cool. I learned a lot of other things you can do with hypnosis, which I do general hypnotherapy as well. But I really focused on the past life regression, and it's just been a fascinating ride. And then a couple of years after that, I learned about Michael Newton's training in life between lives, spiritual regression hypnotherapy. And I had read his book, in the mid-'90s. Journey of Souls is his first book, a very fascinating book, and kind of goes beyond past life regression into the time between our lives, between our incarnations. So I was lucky I was able to attend that training, and I've been a member of the Newton Institute since 2004, doing those life between life sessions, and boy, that has been a mind-opening, eye-opening, heart-opening journey as well.
I can only imagine. I mean, one, taking part in experiencing one yourself, but then experiencing them through other people over and over again would have to be this journey each and every time, isn't it?
It is. It's just like every person's unique, and all the journeys are unique. And Michael has 3 or 4 books out, and every session just about that I do, we find stuff that isn't written about in his book or any other book. So every person walking around right now has all this incredible soul history inside of them, and I'm lucky enough to be able to help them draw it out and to explore that, and most importantly, to see how that can affect their life today in some kind of positive way.
Well, that's fascinating. And I think one of the things that's new for me and will be new for Skeptiko listeners is that I've set up this interview as, I guess you could say, a prelude to a life between lives regression session that I plan to do with you in the near future. So what I'm really hoping to do in this interview is record this session, this dialogue that we're having now, and then go ahead and record the session and then publish them together so that people can get a full sense for, one, what somebody's thinking going in, and I have some questions to ask you, and some of them I'm going to push you a little bit, but I've kind of been through this thing a couple times, and I know what the questions that I have and I think other people have, so we'll see how those go. And then we'll do the session, and I think it'll be really fascinating for people to see the whole process. Have you ever done anything like this, or do you have any reservations about this? You've agreed to do it, which I think is fantastic and says a lot about you. So do you have any thoughts on what we're planning on doing?
I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be great. I think it's a part of every member of the Newton Institute. It's like a need or a thing to do is to help publicize this, because while Michael's books are out there and there are other books and things, I mean, we need to work to publicize this and bring this into the public eye and the public awareness. And that's why I'm really grateful to you, Alex, for contacting me and Jean-Charles and whoever else you've contacted and helping to bring this into the public eye, because it's an amazing therapy. Maybe 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, I mean, if everyone could go through this process, it would be a quite different world, I think. So all in all, I'm really excited, and I'm happy to help publicize the Life Between Lives process.
Great. I think I am too. I guess part of my reservations is, I tried this a few years ago, actually, with a hypnotherapist in L.A. named Bruce Goldberg, who I had heard on Coast to Coast, and he, came on really strong, like he was really this guy who could really get it done and all this. And he was just terrible in my session. He was really bad and really kind of sketchy in some of the things that he said and the regression, and it just wasn't happening, and he was kind of pushing it way too far, and it was such a fail that I didn't want to publicize it because I didn't want to embarrass the field. I wasn't worried about embarrassing him because I think he kind of deserved it to a certain extent, but I didn't want to put down the whole process and turn people away, because I've realized through, just like in medium readings, which I investigated and did some research projects on, quasi-research demonstration projects. But, they don't always work, and that's cool. That's fine, because when they do work, they're incredibly insightful. So I guess my first question, if I could roll that into a question, is How do we know if this is going to work? Does it ever not work? What percentage of the time does it work? How many have you done where they worked versus not worked?
This is a great question. Let me talk about Bruce Goldberg for a minute, if I can. I've read, he has a lot of books out, and he's a pretty decent writer, and I've read some of his books, and they're pretty cool. There's some good information in there. I've never met him. He's not been trained by Michael Newton or the Newton Institute in the Life Between Lives process. He kind of does his own thing. I have a client that I've done several LBL, Life Between Lives, LBL sessions with, and she travels around to different hypnotherapists. She likes trying different things. She's been to the Monroe Institute for the out-of-body stuff. And she went to visit with Mr. Goldberg and had a session with him, and she didn't have a very good experience either. She kind of reported it all to me, and so, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I've never met him. I can't really comment. I'd love to do a session with him to see what would happen, but he's a different animal than this Life Between Lives stuff. The training that we've had and the framework that Michael Newton put up is I won't say it's fail-safe, but it's a pretty strong protocol. Now, to answer your question, how do these sessions ever fail? Are there failed sessions, aborted sessions? Yes, there are. Michael himself is, he reports. He's very honest. He's reported, and he had to abort sessions because they just weren't happening for whatever reason. With all hypnosis sessions, the main problem or the main thing that can prevent a person from doing hypnosis is fear. If they have some sort of fear, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control or being controlled, fear of what they might find out. Maybe I'll find out I was Jack the Ripper, and I don't want to know that. So, I mean, everyone has a little bit of anxiety about doing something for the first time, and that's normal, and that's okay. But if someone has some real fear or some issues, for example, another example, I had a guy, he was having marital problems, and he was really afraid of finding out that his now wife, with whom he's having problems, is not his soulmate. He really wanted her to be his soulmate, and he was afraid of finding out maybe she's not. Oh my God! So, our session just didn't go very well because he didn't want to go there. He didn't want to know the truth. So, to wrap that up and to summarize. Mainly, the only thing that can really prevent a person from doing this kind of thing is fear. There are other things. Sometimes a person could be fatigued, or maybe I didn't have a great day, or whatever. Maybe somebody ate something weird or something. But for the most part, the sessions go pretty well. There is a spectrum of depth of hypnosis that people will attain for the first time. For example, myself, the first few times I've done hypnosis as a client, I just don't go very deep. But I'm able to access information. But the more that I've done it, and I've done it a lot now, I go pretty darn deep, and my sessions have just, stacked more information, and they get deeper and wider and crazier. So for the first time, it may not be as deep as people expect from watching television or hypnosis shows or something like that, but you can still access the information. Not to keep monologuing on, but let me just say one more thing, Alex. We really do recommend, and I would recommend to you, if possible, that you do perhaps like a past life regression session before you do a Life Between Lives session, because it helps acquaint a person with the hypnotic regression process. Then when we do the Life Between Lives session, you'll have sort of been there and done that, and it will just be a lot smoother experience. So that's something to think about. Now, I have plenty of clients who are like traveling, or they only have one shot at this, and I'm usually able to pull them into the Life Between Lives first time. So, it's kind of a gamble. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I have a faith and confidence in my experience and skills. I'm usually able to pull someone in, so I'm not too worried about it.
Well, two questions, I guess, from a practical standpoint. Is that something that I or anyone else would have to decide going in, whether you're going to kind of go for it or not?
Yes, and there's also a middle ground, but I kind of have a policy, Alex, that if someone comes to me and they just aren't able to do anything, I don't charge them a cent. I mean, they've wasted gas and time, and I've used some of my time, but I feel like the universe will pay me for that in some way, so I'm not too worried about it. So I just have them come back in a couple of weeks or whenever they're ready, and we do it, and it usually works out great. Or maybe we'll work on some issue that's preventing them from letting go or getting where they need to get. Maybe we can work on that. That's a possibility too. And so, I'm all about wanting people to have this experience.
If you did have to try and stick a number on it, Scott, what percentage of people do you think aren't really able to successfully get into the experience? What percent are able to get in at a modest level? What percent are able to go pretty deep from maybe a first session? Just rough ballpark numbers.
Okay, yeah. For a first session, doing an LBL session, I'd say, in my experience, I'm able to pull about, I'd say 60 to 75% of people into it. And I'd say another 15%, maybe 15 or 20%, if they come back and work with me again, we're able to do it, no problem. And there's that few percent, 3 to 5%, that might need more, more times, more practice, more work together, or maybe they have some issues that we can work together. So what is that? 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, I think I can usually pull into the LBL first time.
Great. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but not directly. Do you have to believe, does the client have to believe in this? I understand that they can't have these really deep-seated fears about what might come out of it, but do they have to have a belief that any of this stuff is true?
Actually, no. It's actually funny that ability to enter a deep state of hypnosis really has no correlation to a person's belief in it. It's like anything, riding a bike. Some kids just get on that bike and they're like, wow, they go around the block the first time and they just have balance. And some kids are going wham, 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 falling on the ground. But then 3 weeks later, they're going around the block, really good too. So, belief in the whole thing, no, because I have a lot of people who say, I've kind of read a little bit of Michael's book, or my friend told me about this thing. I mean, I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I'm open-minded. So I would say, if a person has an open mind about it, if they haven't quite made up their mind, if they're a skeptico, you might say, if they're a little skeptical but sort of open, that's okay. As long as they have that open-mindedness, that's all we really need. I mean, if a person's very closed down and, say, religiously dogmatic or something like that, it might be a struggle because, they're afraid of God going to strike them down if they do this LBL thing or something like that. But, yeah, to answer your question, no, belief is not a prerequisite. But I would say open-mindedness is.
Great. Excellent. So, Scott, since I am going to be doing this with you, why don't you walk me through the stuff that you would typically tell someone and tell me what I need to do to prepare for this first session. So one of the things you told me is, hey, I might want to consider past life regression before I go with a life between lives regression, and I'll think about that. What else do I need to do to prepare or be aware of?
I'll get to the preparation in a second. Let me just address what I had mentioned before about a sort of a middle ground. A person doing a life between lives session for the first time, I can almost always pull them into a past life regression. The past life regression is sort of our springboard into spirit. We go through the death of that past life persona and up into spirit. That's when the LBL proper really starts. Now, in some of these first-time sessions, we'll get into a past life, but for whatever reason, we're not able to spring into the spirit world. And so that is a caveat that the first time LBL person wants to be aware of. It's possible that we'll get into a past life and not be able to attain the life between lives in this go-round. And there will be a reason for that, Alex. It's usually because that person needs to dwell on the information they encountered in their past life regression. It may be something that their guides or their higher self wants them to think about and to process. So they didn't want them to rush off to the Disneyland or the spirit world yet because they want them to dwell on this past life stuff that just came out. So that's a possibility. If we're going for the life between lives, there's always a possibility it will sort of shut down after the past life. Not that I'm shutting it down, not that you're shutting it down, just that it does, because you need some time to process the past life regression. So that's something to be aware of as well. So if someone comes to do a life between lives and we all get to the past life, try not to be too disappointed. Try to process that past life information, and if you're still into the life between lives, come back later, and we're usually able to do that very smoothly and very beautifully. So to prepare for the life between lives session, there are a few things that you need to do. Probably the most important thing is to think about your current life and to think about the issues in your life, the burning issues, and to make a brief list of personal questions for the session. Things like, am I on the right path? Am I supposed to be doing what I'm doing, or did I take a left turn somewhere? Probably the most important thing that people worry about is their path in life. Are they on the right path, So ask questions about that. You might have relationship questions, What's the deal with my wife? I mean, we met in this amazing way. We have this amazing relationship. I mean, what is our soul relationship? What is our relationship as soul, as spirits? Did we plan this to be together in this life? Those kinds of things. You can also ask kind of mundane things, should I move to Seattle? Should I take that job that was offered to me last week? Should I change my focus in life? Why did I get hit by that car when I was 11? What about that weird dream that I had, last week? It seemed like it was an angel talking to me. So you can ask about all these things. Make a list of the most burning issues in your life, because during this session, we will have a chance to meet with your spirit guides or your council of elders. There are wise beings of light on the other side that we will encounter. And they know you better than you know yourself, basically. They've watched you grow since you were spawned as a soul, however that works. And so they've been with you, and they know. They want to help you develop. So we will meet with one or more of these beings of light, these wise and loving people. And we will get your questions addressed, and kind of through your own mouth, through your own voice, sometimes almost as if you're channeling that person. So that's definitely the highlight of a session.
Can I jump in there for a minute? I want to talk about spirit guides because it's a fascinating topic. I'm definitely open to it. Man, I already have my list, Scott. Baby, I got that. I'm ready to go.
All right.
And I'm looking forward to it. At the same time, I do have some questions about the experience, the spirit guide soul journey thing, and in particular, how it relates to other kinds of extended human consciousness experiences. Because from that, work that I've done, investigation that I've done, I don't know, there's something there that I don't want to say it doesn't ring true, because that's not accurate. I don't want to say it doesn't jive with those other experiences, because it doesn't. There's a lot of similarity. There's much, much more similarity to, for example, a near-death experience and what people report back to the kind of experience you're talking about than there are differences. But there are some differences. And the one thing that strikes me, and maybe you're not saying this, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but are all these experiences the same? Do all people experience elders, spirit guides in the same form that come to meet them? Because that's not what I hear from the near-death experience literature and science. There's a big variety in the kind of experiences people have, what they take away from them, and even in terms of how they experience it. And we know from doing research on that, there's cultural influences. There's also just kind of personal influences. And we don't even know what all the influences are because we're kind of trapped down in this perspective that we have looking up at this, what appears to be a much larger perspective. Do you want to speak to that for a minute? Are we rock solid about this spirit guide thing and that's always the way that it happens? Or are we using that as a metaphor for some larger experience that we can't really pin down, but it comes through as that sometimes?
I think it's a very good question, and I would say that, in Star Trek, the old Star Trek, they had this logo, IDIC, it's infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And that's what I see in these sessions. No, everyone does not have the same sort of experience in these Life Between Life sessions. I believe everyone does have spirit guides, but they may or may not encounter those spirit guides in a session. They may or may not encounter the Council of Elders or a place of healing or a soul library or these other things that Michael Newton talks about. They may go totally something that I've never even heard of or never even experienced. Hey, we're going on a spaceship to this planet X and we're going to talk to these people there. Or, I mean, it's amazing what comes out of people's mouths during these sessions. So, no, it's not, one size fits all. It's totally a wide variety of experiences, just like near-death experiences. Some people encounter that religious figure, which they say is Jesus, and in the near-death experience, so some people go through the tunnel or whatever. Some people don't. I mean, yeah, it's totally the same with this. It's totally out of the box. Michael Newton he did thousands of these sessions, and he did tend to encounter similar experiences, but that does not mean that everyone is going to have the same experience. Not at all. Like I said, I think I mentioned earlier, almost in every session that I do, like wacky, wild, beautiful things come up that I've never even heard of. And so, I don't know if that answers your question. I did a session last night, Alex. It was with a person that I've worked with before. She has a really easy facility with all this hypnosis stuff. So, and we've met her guides and stuff like that. She has a guide. It's a beautiful female figure. She was looking for information about a personal issue. We said, let's go to a past life as a springboard into spirit. So I took her into what I thought was a past life, but she's like, no, this is not a past life. This is a spirit world. I'm waiting to go do a planning session for my next lifetime. I'm like, okay. And then I had a feeling, let's go backwards. And I'm curious, how did you find let's go back to the point where you made the decision that you wanted to incarnate again. So we went backward in that process. And, well, there was a life review from the past life that she just came from. And that was really intense for her. She had done some things in that life that she wasn't very proud of. And so she made a determination that, I'm going to do another life that's going to atone for this, and it has to do with the issue that she's going through now and all this stuff. So we're able to sort of stop the action and move back and forth along the track. It doesn't have to follow A, B, C, D, E. We can go start at C and go back to A and go forward to E. And so during these sessions, we can move along the tracks any which way we need to get the information that the client is looking for.
I'll tell you what, I kind of jumped in there and interrupted you. Why don't you continue on, Scott, and tell me what other things would you advise me before this session? What other things do you typically share with clients?
Oh, boy. I have a whole pre-talk that I will do with you, and I do with all of my clients. Part of it has to do with hypnosis. Part of it has to do with the regression process. I'll boil that down to a Cliff Notes version for you and your listeners right now. And if I'm too wordy, just stop me and just, cut in and tell me that's enough. So about hypnosis, I want to talk to people about hypnosis. Give them a definition of hypnosis, which a textbook definition, a scientific definition of hypnosis is just increased suggestibility. Whenever someone has increased suggestibility, that is a state of trance, that is a state of hypnosis. So you'll just be a little more suggestible. A modern definition of hypnosis, which I really love, I forget who came up with this. I wish I could credit them, but I don't remember who said this. But it's just hypnosis is the shift from thinking mind to feeling mind. So we're trying to get a little out of our head and a little more in our heart or in our gut, and kind of shooting from the hip, kind of going with what comes up without tying yourself in a mental knot. Because that's what we do with our brains and our minds. We'll tie ourselves in knots. When we come from the heart, that's usually the right thing to do. So kind of shift your energy down from your head into your heart. That's an important thing. And kind of go with what comes up. Another thing, we'll talk about the, what does hypnosis feel like? Well, it feels different for everyone. Some people say, I felt heavy. Some people say, I felt light. Some people say, I felt tingly. Some people say, I didn't feel any different at all. I just was sitting here. And, the first time I went to do hypnosis, when I learned about hypnosis, my teacher said, okay, Scott, we're going to hypnotize you now. I'm like, okay. So we're doing this thing, and I wasn't really feeling anything, Alex. I was just sitting there, and I was thinking, oh, boy, I got to find a real teacher, because I don't think this person knows what they're doing. So, yeah, and we're working on some personal issues just as like practice fodder for, the hypnotherapy. And then, it's funny because even though I didn't feel any different, this scene came into my mind when one of my parents, I was a little kid, and one of my parents was belittling me about something. It wasn't like a big trauma. It wasn't something I brooded about over the years. I don't even remember it consciously. It was one of those 900 times when your dad tells you, you're an idiot or something like that. It wasn't not a big deal. And we all have that, right? So, but why did that come into my mind? And then I realized, that's when like bing, the light went on for me. That's what hypnosis is all about, and hypnotherapy. It opens the doors to your memories. It's not that it makes you feel weird or different. You're not going to go under, unless you fall under the couch or something. You're not going to go under anything, but it's going to open the doors to your memories. That scene was connected to how I feel about myself when I was doing that hypnosis session. It had something to do with my self-esteem, and I learned from that scene. So even though I didn't feel different, something popped into my mind which was very useful for me. So that's the true magic of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. It somehow opens these doors to your inner self and your memories. So that's important to know. There's some myths about hypnosis. We'll go through the myths. Hypnosis is like sleep, right? I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to say this crazy stuff, and then you're going to tell me later. No, you're not going to go to sleep. You're not going to be unconscious. You're not going to be anesthetized or, unaware. You're going to be awake and aware, just like you are now, Alex, but you're going to open up this other part of you. Alex isn't going away. We're not going to put him in a box in the other room somewhere. He's going to be right there on your shoulder. Your conscious mind, ego, Alex, is going to be right there. But we're also going to open up this other window, or this other portal or door to this other person that you were in a past life, and also the greater door to who you are as a soul. This soul who was, Joe in the past life, and who was Alex now, and will be, Mary 100 years from now. So we're just opening doors. So it's important to realize that. Another myth of hypnosis is you could control me and make me do crazy things, turn my clothes off and run down the street naked, screaming like a chicken. I could do that to you, Alex, if I wanted to, but I probably won't do that in our session. That's a joke.
Okay.
I can't do that. You can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. At every point, the client is in control of the session. They have the choice of whether to accept or not accept any suggestion that I give them, and it's just a suggestion. I can't make anybody do anything. I serve as a guide. We serve as a guide for you. We've been there and done that. I could, it's like a team sport. It's like a buddy system. I've been up the mountain a few times, and maybe you haven't. So I know we need to go around this boulder, and I can help you across this stream. I can't carry you the whole way. I need you to put a little effort in yourself, too. But you're part of the team, too, so I need you to communicate with me about your experience and let me know what's going on. You might say, hey, there's a rattlesnake on the path. I'll say, whoa, good one. I'm glad you noticed that. Let's go around that guy. So you're part of the team, too. So it really is a team sport. The most important, the biggest concern most people have about hypnosis is, can I do it? Am I too busy-minded? Am I too this? Am I too that? But everyone can do it. Everyone does it all the time in their daily life. If you can focus enough to build an awesome website, if you can focus enough to read a book or make a work of art or something like that, you can do this. This is like way easier than doing that stuff. So everybody can do it, and we do it all the time in our daily life. So, that's not really... hypnosis is kind of a weird baggage because of Hollywood and stuff like that, but it's really a simple way to just open up doors. So, okay, so that's the hypnosis side. Do you have any questions? I'll ask my client, and I'll ask you now. Do you have any questions about hypnosis itself?
No.
Okay. 3 things I'll tell you about regression and how to work this regression that we're going to do. Number 1, the way this whole thing works is through your impressions. You're going to receive impressions of some kind, whether you see it, hear it, have thoughts in your mind, have feelings, like physical feelings, like I feel cold, or emotional feelings, like I feel scared, like someone's chasing me. Or just have intuitive knowings, like I don't see anything, I don't hear anything, I just have a feeling that I'm on a ship, I'm out in the ocean, and we're getting thirsty because there's no water. And so you're going to receive impressions of some kind. And I'll take people through a little exercise, a fun little exercise, kind of like a free association thing where I'll just toss out a word and have them, snap back with a word, whatever word comes to mind without thinking, just snapping back, just practicing blurting, basically. Because I'll be asking questions and making statements, and they will stimulate a response in you somehow. And so I just want you to practice and just going with the first thing that comes up, your first impression. If you stop to think about it, if you stop to overthink it and analyze it too much, you're going to stop the flow. So you got to just go with the first thing that pops up, and the second thing, and the third thing. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to snap back immediately. You don't. If you remember the old Polaroid cameras, you'd take a picture, and the thing would come out, and it'd be blank. And then after maybe 60 seconds, an image would start to sort of materialize. Sometimes these regression sessions are like that. You'll be a little blank at first, but if we just be patient and wait, something will materialize, something will form, something will develop, you might say. And so, I'm a patient guy, and so I'll be happy to wait. And if nothing's coming to you, just tell me, Scott, I got nothing. I'm totally blank. I'm like, okay, we'll just move on to the next thing because there are about 1 million things we can cover. If that was an important thing, we'll circle back around to get that. So the second thing I would say about regression is that we do have these different sensory modes. Some people are very visual, and their regression is going to be very visual in their mind's eye. Some people are not visual. Some people are maybe auditory, where they're going to hear voices, France, 1803. Oh, man, I'm in Napoleon's army, or something like that. They're going to hear these thoughts or words or voices are going to pop into their head. Some people are like kinesthetic or emotional. They'll feel the feelings. They'll feel their way through the regression. I've had people who didn't see a darn thing the whole session, but they felt their way through it, through their feelings and through their inner knowings, through their intuitive feelings. So whatever your style is okay. And the reason I tell you this is that don't expect it to be a purely visual experience, like going to the movies and watching yourself on the screen, wow, eating your popcorn. It may not be like that. You may have to feel your way through it, but that's okay. We can have a dynamite experience that way. And so the last thing I'll tell people about regression is really the most important thing to know. At some point in this experience, you may have a feeling or wonder, am I just making this up? Because of that book I read, am I just creating this with my subconscious mind? It's very common to feel that we may be making it up or wishful thinking or, creating this somehow. But it's not a real authentic past life or between life experience. And my theory about that, Alex, is that the memories we have in our current lifetime are encoded in our brains and our neurons in that electrochemical soup of memory, however that works. And they have a certain solidity, a certain concrete quality. So if I ask you, who was your third grade teacher? You'll say, well, that was Mrs. Brown. If I ask you, what did you have for dinner last night? You'll say, well, it was lasagna. It was great. And if I ask you, where were you 500 years ago? Your brain kind of goes, huh? That does not compute. We have no memory. We have no record for this 500 years ago thing. This question does not, apply. But you know where you were 500 years ago. Your soul, your energy, your essence knows that you were on the plains of Mongolia riding a pony, collecting a harem of beautiful women or whatever you were doing. But when that kind of comes up from your soul through your mind and your brain has no record of that, and so it will sort of question it or doubt it or say, what? Where is this even coming from? So there's always that little tug of war, that little push-pull thing, or you may wonder if you're doubting it. So the memories from your soul feel a little different, a little more vague, a little more hazy, a little more unsure than the memories that are in your brain, in your current life and body. So the memories we're accessing are going to feel a little ghostly or a little hazy or a little misty. But once we connect with those memories and once we explore them, I will immerse you more and more intensely into that experience, and it will become more and more real to you. But it's just something to look out for. At first, you're probably going to wonder, am I making this up? But if I'm clever enough, I will immerse you more and more into your experience, and it will become more and more real for you. So that's basically the pre-talk. Thanks for being so patient with me. You're a very good listener.
That was excellent. I thought that was a very good laying out the whole thing, and I love what you're saying at the end. Very good, very good. So I don't want to say too much because I'm becoming the client as you talk, and I'm just excited and really motivated to come on up there and do this thing. So what I think we should do is wrap up our little dialogue here. Again, for those of you who don't remember, talking to Scott De Tamble, who is a hypnotherapist and life between lives specialist in Southern California, right outside of LA. And Scott, I'm really looking forward to, after we end this little session here, we'll talk about finding a time for me to come up there and do this thing, and then we'll check back in with our skeptical listeners here and let them know how it went. So unless there's anything else we need to cover, is there anything else we need to cover?
Can I mention my website?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll have links to this in the show notes, of course. But for those of you who are listening, please go ahead. It's Light Between Lives. Is that the best place for folks to reach you?
Yes, sir. Light Between Lives, L-I-G-H-T, between L-I-V-E-S.com.
Which I think is a great domain. I don't know how you got that, but it's, so it's Lives Between Lives, but it's really these light beings that Scott so often encounters. So it's Light Between Lives. And I know if you just type that in, his website will come right up. But please tell me what other information people should know about you.
Yeah, I was very inspired on that one, I think. And it is my great honor to be able to converse with your guides and your counsels and those wise and loving beings around my clients who, have a great interest in their development as souls. Let me thank those unseeing beings for this ride, this journey that I've been on. I'd also mention to your listeners that all over the country, in fact, all over the globe, we have therapists trained in this life between lives, a methodology created by Michael Newton. And people can go to, I believe it's newtoninstitute.org, and then they can search for a therapist in their area, someone near them. We have therapists all over the world now. So over maybe 200, 250 people trained in this. So there are probably someone not too far away from you where you can go and have this experience, and I definitely recommend you do that. If you feel called, and feel ready, you'll have the time of your life.
Wow, that's certainly exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think if it goes well, I think there's a lot of people that will have maybe been sitting on the fence or thinking about this and will want to take that next step. So,
what do you mean if it goes well?
Well, I have the best of intentions, and we'll just see how it goes.
I'm just teasing you, but yeah, I have a really good feeling about it. So, I really look forward to it. I really look forward to meeting you, Alex. It's going to be really fun.
Great, Scott. Well, thanks again for joining me today, and we will be back in touch. I'm going to keep you on the line here, but I'll be back in touch with our listeners in just a little while with the actual session. So thanks again, Scott.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all of you listening out there. It's lovely to be able to share with you this way. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks again to Scott De Tamble for joining me on Skeptiko. So I did visit Scott, and I went through my Life Between Lives regression session. I have to say it didn't turn out nearly as well as I'd hoped. It was still interesting. I have to say it was the first time that I had ever really been hypnotized. I had tried many times, and I tried with Scott, and it was mostly unsuccessful. But at one point, I was at least able to get to that first stage when you're given a suggestion, like you're not able to open your eyes, and then you're asked to test it, and I did test it, and I wasn't able to open my eyes. It was the first time that ever happened. It's kind of amazing. I mean, it's a very tiny little thing to take away, but it's one thing I did take away. We did go through the session, and we worked at a very light level. I was totally conscious, and we did some of the exercises and went through some of the procedures, but I just wouldn't call it anything close to a life between lives or even a past life regression session. I just didn't experience it in that way. Now, I did come away from it with an appreciation and an increased confidence in Scott. I do believe that he does this all the time, that he's highly successful with it in a real way that really gets real results for people, but it just didn't work for me. To that end, I do plan on working on this hypnosis thing a little bit more, so I'm going to stay at it, just like if you remember when I told you I went for my first medium reading years ago. I had to go through a few trials before I really got one that hit. Maybe the same thing's going to happen here, so I will keep you posted on that as it goes. One question to tee up from this interview that I'd like to get your input on: have you ever had any experience with past lives, either past life memories, or maybe you actually had a past life regression like the kind that Scott does? What are your experiences with it? I'd sure like to hear about it. Of course, the place to do that is on the Skeptiko forum or on the comment section of the website, both of which you can get to through our website at skeptiko.com. That's skeptiko.com. You can also access all our previous shows via free download or through iTunes, and you can find an email and Facebook link to me. Well, that's going to do it for today. A number of interesting shows coming up, a couple of different places we have to go, and many more requests for interviews going out and coming back. So stick around for much, much more. Until next time, take care, and bye for now.